on here, and I think we either have come across people in the past or we're acquaintances. I don't know what the etiquette is today because there's so many on here, but cameras on?
Yeah, cameras on. If everybody's happy with the cameras.
If you're okay with that. Oh, Martin's joined. Hi, Martin. How you doing? Do you want to do intros? Do you want to do intros, or are we just?
We might be here till 6 o'clock.
Yeah. So, I think there's a mixture of either acquaintances or colleagues on here, ex-colleagues.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to quickly whiz through them?
Yeah, we can do.
If I just sort of started off. So yeah. My MD John will be joining us, but he's been caught up. So sends his apologies, but he will do a closing speech. But yeah, thank everybody for coming along this evening. So this is my actual first architecture event I've done with Corcom. In the 12 months I've been with them. So prior to this, I did 10 years with one of their competitors, another Yorkshire-based IT recruitment consultancy, and Lambros actually did my first event 9 years ago in April. All those many moons ago. So yeah, thank you, Lambros, for chairing this one too. So yeah, I mean, so the Boss Series events were ultimately launched with the objective of bringing together technology leaders to solve, I suppose, leadership level challenges. So we run these events across our sort of core verticals within Corcom, and it's an opportunity to share knowledge and to share ideas and ultimately building out new relationships. So yeah, I'm Sam Hameed. So predominantly recruit IT architecture across the north of England, and I'll pass over to Lambros very quickly.
Hello, thanks for joining us this evening. Lambros Lambrou. I think I know quite a lot of you, either directly or indirectly. Been in the architecture space for far too long now, and currently working with Leeds Teaching Hospital, along with Julia, who's on here, and maybe some other colleagues. I'm not sure actually at the moment. EA, whatever it may be, sorting technical stuff out. But I've worked in IT for coming on probably 30 years now. A bit scary. Yeah, so looking forward to this evening. Should we move on to who next, Sam? Should we go to Mr.
I'll tell you what. Should we go? Shall I do it from my right? And it might make it a bit easier then. So we'll go on to Mike Lewis.
It needs to come off mute. Hi, yeah, I'm Solutions Director at Solutionize Global.
Brilliant, short and sweet. Andy Shuttleworth.
Yep, Andy Shuttleworth. I'm Director and co-owner of Co-Stratify.
Brilliant. Simon Sherburn.
I'm Enterprise Architect at Manchester City Council.
Brilliant. John Smith.
I am John Smith. I'm Head of Data and Digital at Parity Group.
And no relation, Richard Smith.
I'm usually not very sober for your events, Sam. So
I know.
And I think last time I spoke to Lambros, I was also drunk. Anyway, yeah, Richard Smith, contract EA. Yeah, generally in the financial and retail space. Very busy at the moment. That's about it, really.
Cool. Pete Elliott.
Yeah, Peter Elliott. Currently, I'm a consultant with Capgemini in their global payments practice, but had a varied career in financial services, manufacturing, travel as well over the years in various architectural roles.
Okay. Paul Luna.
Yeah, hi, Paul Looney from the company, Enterprise Architecture and Business Development, especially around the healthcare arena.
Brilliant. Steve Grant.
Hi everyone, yeah, Steve Grant. I work at DLA Piper as an EA, so yeah, in the legal sector.
Brilliant. Simon Graham.
Hi, Simon Graham, EA contractor. Just finished a 7-year contract with DXC, recently at HP, and nice to meet you all.
Right. Nigel.
So I'm an EA working for
BT with a focus on all things digital.
Brilliant. Paul Potter.
Yeah, I'm Paul Potter, new to architecture, in fact, setting up a new practice at ANCAT Hanover, and I'm the head of architecture and solutions here.
Lee Keevil.
Yes, I'm Lee Kivell. I'm enterprise architect at Vitality. We're an insurance company, sort of do health, life, insurance and wellness, that sort of thing.
Clive.
I'm head of architecture at Evo Group, who sort of sell and distribute office products.
Right. Paul Clements.
Yeah, head of architecture and enterprise architect at the British Library.
Okay, great. Julia.
Hi, so I'm Julia Lake. I'm an information manager at Leeds Teaching Hospitals, working on the data platform work and know much more about data than I do about enterprise architecture.
Thank you. Stuart Stocks.
Hi, Stuart Stocks. I'm currently with Logic in Leeds, working in healthcare over at Manchester client at the moment. Previously, Medical Protection Society chief architect, also in Leeds on the financial side, so I've transitioned from finance to healthcare.
Right. Thank you. John Flynn.
I'm head of technical architecture at SDL currently. I previously worked with the NHS as solution architect and the Master Programme for IT. And I've also worked at Royal Mail as solution architect in the previous life.
Thank you. Eamon.
Hi, Eamon Walsh, enterprise architect at Royal London, a life pensions wealth management company.
Okay. Thank you. Darren.
Hi, I'm a lead architect at DWP BBTDS, working in the health PDU.
Okay, thanks. Martin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Martin Sinclair, a contract enterprise and solution architect, currently providing services to Burberry.
Super. Mike Hooker. I think Mike's on mute, or he's having. Can anybody hear Mike, or is it just me? Oh, there we go. I think. Who knows? Right, well, moving on. Simon Ablett.
Simon Ablett, chief architect, one of the chief architects at Mastech consulting company, specialising in enterprise enablement and facilitation, really, which basically means I'm a lead enterprise architect.
Brilliant. Justin.
Justin Thewlis. I am the EMEA Assurance Digital Enablement Lead at PwC.
Brilliant. Paolo.
Yeah, this is Paolo Bugnasti from Amsterdam. I'm a Java developer with a architect orientation, done a lot of architecture in the past.
Brilliant. And Rob's having issues with his microphone. And Aliyah? No.
Hi.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, I'm Aliyah Khalid. I'm a solution architect at BT, looking after the EE side of things.
Brilliant. I think I haven't missed anybody out. If I have, please shout up now. No, super. Lambros, so I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, a lot of enterprise architects on this evening, so hopefully this subject will be interesting to you all and you'll be able to contribute. Very straightforward. Is enterprise architecture dead? Bit to the point. I think I'd like to start by asking, did EA really work in the real world? Now, having worked in many organizations, mixed bag of experiences, I'd like to open it out to everybody this evening to sort of share experiences. My thoughts are that, is it a technology discipline, or does that mean that architecture roles are technology aligned, or are there true enterprise architecture roles out there? I suppose it depends on the organization, your experiences. Both of you, mixed bag. Some organizations align to to frameworks, etc. But do they actually really embrace enterprise architecture, or do they just align EAs to technology and use them to enable or facilitate delivery? Open it up. Mr. Smith, John Smith, come on. You've got plenty of experience in this space, and we've been through the mill together. So,
well, is it dead, or has it just slipped into a coma under the table and no one noticed? And if it is dead, who's killed it or what's killed it?
Okay.
More readily, what do we define as dead? What do we define as life? And what are our metrics for success with enterprise architecture, generally speaking? Because one of your points that you made on there about, you know, do people use frameworks? How do they apply it? Is it business centric, etc.? There are a lot of different common themes in there, and a lot of organizations have a different view on enterprise architecture. So maybe we should start with a definition of what we believe enterprise architecture to be and what its focus should be before we look at whether it's living, dying, or should be put out of its misery.
If we
yeah, that'll take the hour.
Exactly. Yeah. If we link back into Lambros's question, you know, is it a technology discipline or not? For me, it needs to be a bridge between, you know, the consumers and commissioners of, you know, whatever's going to be delivered and the technologists. So if it's dead, you know, is it succeeding as a bridge? Is it still that communication and control piece between business and delivery that it should be?
So are we saying that is it a fight between concepts and delivery?
If we take the job role of architecture, going back many years, actually it is the bridge between the client. You know, an architect has got a customer who's got a budget, wants a building to do a certain thing. You take that requirement, you create a set of drawings you can give to a builder. So really, are we doing that role, but from a technology perspective, rather than bricks and mortar?
Certainly should be. It should be a business-centric role. We should be business-oriented technologists, and you know, we should understand the value chain for our clients, or ourselves, depending if it's an internal client. You know, if we don't understand the value chain, we don't understand how the business works, we're never going to align the technologies across that broader chain, are we? So it has to be business-centric. In much the same way as you were making there, the point you were just making about traditional architects, it's not about the style and the aesthetic of that building, it's how will those spaces be used within the building, the public spaces, are they appropriate? Does the flow work within the building? Are the toilets in a place that's accessible and work logistically to get rid of the output? You know, all of those kind of things that need to be considered. It's the same with technology, isn't it?
Exactly. So effectively, we've discussed, so we agree that what architecture does is a bridge between a requirement and a deliverable. Attach the word enterprise to it, and in my opinion, effectively, it's about making sure the business as an entity, the enterprise, can achieve its aims.
And that's why we have the difference between enterprise and solutions architecture. Solutions architecture looks at individual points of solution or points of problem. An enterprise looks at the whole ecosystem into which those individual solutions will fit to make a coherent whole.
So is from experience then? Sorry, apologies. Go on.
No, I'm just going to say there's another way of looking at this, I think, a little bit, because if you look at why enterprise architecture came about in the first place, you know, it was because there were a lot of legacy systems about. There was a real big disconnect between IT and business, and organisations wanted to move forward. If you look at greenfield site businesses, how many of those have actually gone to the trouble of putting in a full-blown enterprise architecture organisation, a framework, and all those type of things? And I bet there's very few that have actually done that.
Well, they don't, because they think they don't need to do. They wait until it's too late and then have to retrofit, don't they, generally speaking?
Well, but this is what I was saying about why enterprise architecture came through, because there was people, organisations wanted to move on. They had legacy systems, there was a big disconnect. But what enterprise architecture has done is almost strangled itself a little bit in red tape and stuff that isn't particularly useful to an organisation now, because it's detached itself away from what the actual business wants to do. You know, it's all right putting a blueprint together and a roadmap and stuff, but practically there isn't a lot of value in some of that for organisations that want to move in continuous integration, continuous delivery. So the discipline's got to change and move on with that.
So if,
now that a lot of those legacy systems are going in, in the smaller, larger organisations, big banks, they're never going to get rid of some of that legacy stuff.
So you gave the example of a greenfield site there, and I think the thing is with it, a greenfield site tends to be set up with a single purpose, and typically enterprise architecture grows up as a requirement inside an organisation because actually very often that company has multiple purposes. And what you're trying to do from an enterprise architecture perspective is to try and combine some of these multiple purposes to serve the business as efficiently as possible.
Even organisations with a single purpose have multiple domains that all have their own concerns. So I think even if you're the most single-minded psychotic organisation in the world, and a lot are, you still need that enterprise view. I think where the trouble is that if enterprise architecture is supposed to be that communication conduit between the business and the people delivering stuff, they're actually, it's not a translation service. It just creates hieroglyphics. How many times really have you created a set of enterprise architecture artifacts and no one's read them? You know, there's been so many write-only documents produced in the last couple of decades, and I think we're missing out on the communication side of it as much as we are the formalization side of it.
Well, that should be a given, shouldn't it? I mean, because as architects, we are actually leaders, and the whole tenet of the basic tenet of leadership is about persuasion, and persuasion comes about through effective communication. And that's why often a lot of technical architects struggle when they move into solution, and solution architects struggle when they move into enterprise architecture, because the communication skills change at those different levels, and you have to reskill and become. We should be more narrative builders as enterprise architects, talking in business-centric terms and away from the technology.
I agree with what you said there, apart from the bit that you said we're leaders, because actually we're communicators. That should be the role of the EA. It's a or whatever architecture discipline, it's a communicator. Not, everybody leads in their own way. And I think this is one of the issues that enterprise architecture has had, is that it's been sat above there as it's supposed to lead something, but it actually doesn't know what it's supposed to lead.
Well, that's why we need to follow that definition, don't we, really? About, I mean, there are multiple facets of enterprise architecture, aren't there? There are things like, the enablement aspects of it, such as baselining, maturity modeling, all of those kind of things. The basically, where do you starting from on your journey? There's the governance and oversight aspects of it. How do we ensure that the enterprise ecosystems and the business processes that they support are fit for purpose? And then there's facilitation, which really moves into the things like target architecture definitions, transitional modeling, and all those kind of things, And first and foremost, before all of this, which we should have sat in the enablement section there, is strategy and roadmap development, because normally we should be working with those business partners. How many times have you gone into an organization or your organization itself, and you look at the IT strategy, and the IT strategy is a series of point solutions, and you ask them, why are these prioritized in this way, or why have you chosen to do these point solutions? And nobody can give you a coherent answer for it, because nobody from the business perspective, all the little business fiefdoms, they're all looking after their own little domain. They're not considering, finance is not considering what HR's doing, HR's not considering what procurement's doing, procurement's not considering what logistics are doing. And that's where we come into the bound. We should be the glue that coalesces all of this and looks at the end-to-end value chain again. It always comes back to the value chain.
So on that point there, Simon, organizations with IT strategies, not all organizations have them.
Nope, that's true. That is absolutely true.
So if an organization doesn't have an IT strategy, what is the role of an EA then? The conversation we're having here is that it doesn't necessarily align to technology, which is fine. But actually, in an organization which doesn't have an IT strategy or is greenfield, Peter's point, you don't have an EA, or the EA role evolved because of organizations with legacy or multiple domains. So what is the role of an EA? So is the role of an EA dependent on what that individual or individuals within an organization with the title of EA make it out to be? So are we storytellers? Are we visionaries? Are we strategists? It sounds as though there isn't a clear definition. It ultimately depends on the organization and what the requirements are. And the title of an EA doesn't really matter. You could be anything. You just come in and you do something. I think Martin, you were wanting to
I was
jump in at one point.
just going to
Yeah.
say, Lambros. I mean, I've listened to obviously all these great people here for 10, 15 minutes now, and I can see logic and elements of enterprise architecture in every unique thing that everybody said. And it's such a wide discipline, which, you know, it's one of those questions, what is enterprise architecture? We could ask 30 people here and 30 people will give a completely different definition. And every one of them will be correct in its own very different way. So it's one of those disciplines, isn't it? And as a contractor, I've probably got a unique view with all the organizations that I've visited, and many of the people here who are contractors as well will probably say some of the same things. And we generally visit dysfunctional organizations, those which have or desire to have an enterprise architecture function, but it's very difficult to integrate something horizontally and get buy-in at that particular level that everybody embraces. So an EA function becomes very difficult to operate successfully without buy-in from the whole organization. And I think as a greenfield organization, that's probably where you're set up for success, trying to integrate into an existing organization, especially one with a lot of legacy. And that's not just technology, that's process, people, all that other good stuff which drives an organization. That's where the challenge and probably the ineffectiveness of EA is from my perspective.
I think you hit the nail on the head there by mentioning people and processes there, because very often those three things have to change to be successful. And unfortunately, the focus is on technology because it seems the easiest to implement. Processes and people is somebody else's problem.
Exactly. People and process is not flexible. That's the problem. Technology is seen as the glue that will bridge those two functions, probably incorrectly a lot of the time.
Yeah, because the technology changes, but the information and the technology changes, but the people in general and the information remain the same. So I think, and that's coming back to Lambros's first question, which I think were a nice hook for a lot of this discussion, is it a technology thing or is it, or should it remain a communication thing? And going back to we've been using a lot of analogies today, comparing architects, enterprise architects to architects in construction. Well, we said, what is an enterprise architect? And it does differ by environment. What's a chef? Well, it's a very different thing in the Ritz than in a kebab van, isn't it?
I agree, but I think the reason why we can't agree on what the terms are is because some of the terms that support the way we do work are also abused, shall we say? So what? Well, I mean, one organisation to one organisation's function is another one's capability.
If you take it to a business level, if you're in a business, the business is there to do something. And if you look at what the most successful businesses today are doing, they're basing everything around customer experience and that customer UI. And I very, very rarely see anything on enterprise architecture that gets to that level at all. You look at Amazon. Amazon doesn't, for Amazon Web, doesn't particularly have enterprise architecture. They have very distinct teams of 8 people or something like that, and put the customer in the room. And that's how they've become really, really successful. Very little to do with enterprise architecture. And I'm sure there must be some stuff in the background, but that's how they develop a product. And for most organizations now, it's customer experience and customer UI. And every enterprise architecture conversation I've ever had in my career, I don't think that's ever been a topic at the forefront. It's been about target architecture, understanding the current state, all this type of stuff. But that's not particularly helping a business move on very, very quickly. You've got to question where the value to the business is in that stuff.
And there is a question, it's a good point that you're making, but there is a question as well, is of the number of failed IT projects out there, and there are a significant number of them, and obviously, to varying degrees of failure. The real question is might their efficacy have been greater if they had taken more of an enterprise view? Now, I totally take your point. Amazon, in lots of ways, are an exception because they are so phenomenally huge, and the challenges that they face are so significantly different, perhaps, that never having worked for them, I can't really qualify that, than a lot of organizations will do. And the other question is even though they don't potentially have enterprise architects by name, there is a good chance that they are actually looking at an enterprise architecture at some point. Perhaps.
To Lambros's point, basically, about is enterprise architecture dead? Has it morphed into something else, or should it be morphed into something else? You know, where you're talking about that digital experience, and you're talking about digital designers and all that type of stuff. All that now should be part of that enterprise. If you want
And I'd support Peter on this, because I think maybe it is dead in the way we sense it. If you look, I mean, Peter's point about Amazon's is a great one, but also look in the public sector around GDS standards. I mean, there's no concept within that of enterprise architecture amongst those building blocks. It's all about user-centric design, being agile. Maybe EA is dead because we're just, and from a business development point of view too, I don't see many tenders now where people are asking for, you know, TOGAF 9.1 qualified staff. They want real results.
So Paul, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, Lambros, just as an extension of that, is perhaps some of the benefits of enterprise architecture missing a trick here? So all the good stuff which enables agile ways of working, innovation, all the things around solution building blocks, enterprise continuum, documentation, those frameworks which allow us to, which enterprise architecture is really useful at allowing us to springboard designs from. I never really see much of that within organizations. The EA tool set, those enabling pieces of software, those enabling applications, they're generally just locations on a team site somewhere. The tool set around the EA function is never mature enough to actually be of a benefit to the wider organization. It's generally restricted to people drawing designs and just creating viewpoints.
So is that relating to sort of what the outcomes of EA or an EA an enterprise architect or an enterprise architecture function? And I think is Mr. Shuttleworth on here? Yes,
yeah.
Andy, your experience with your clients. I know that the work that you do, you apply EA methods, but actually that's not within an organization. That's your organization.
Yeah, I think
tooling and approach.
Yeah, my view is very simple, I guess. Is we basically apply, as you said there, enterprise methods, enterprise architecture methods within a process. It gives us a process and a method for basically defining and representing what the business want to do from a technology point of view. So, you know, I think Peter, or I think someone said it earlier on in terms of, you know, how do you kind of bring people along with you, and how do you get the kind of the wider buy-in from IT and business? Well, I feel that is one of the major roles that EA has in an organization is that communication and getting that buy-in across IT and the business to actually achieve something together. And that's very much kind of the roadmap work that we do is absolutely that. It's looking at kind of what the business wants to do and why they want to do it and what they're not getting from IT today. And from IT's point of view, it's okay, what does the business want to do and how do they want to achieve it? Why do they want to achieve it? And then this is the roadmap we put in place that the business agrees to, that IT agrees to, etc. So that outcome for me has to be, from my perspective, I say a very simple view of it is it has to be a roadmap and it has to be almost a business case as well, I guess, for each of those individual elements of that to achieve.
That's the question, isn't it? You know, if not us, who would do that? Who would enforce that people look at the entire value chain, you know, across the board and make sure that the business cases stack up, that they've been created? I mean, how often have you seen companies? I mean, you go into lots of companies by the sound of it, the same as me. How often do you see where that they're rushing to basically bring technology in, or ostensibly automating an already broken process? So basically making sure the sticky stuff hits the fan sooner. You know, we're probably the last port of resort that can actually bring them back and get them to look at whether what they're doing is sensible, aren't we, really?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And it's that reuse.
You also get to the point where certain organizations actually have got an exception for every eventuality, but don't know what good looks like.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely good point.
But that concept of doing stupid stuff faster by racing towards the tech, you know, the tech architecture. I mean, how often? I mean, who's ever really done an EA piece from scratch, or who's had to run the TOGAF loop in reverse to make sure that whatever's, people have already signed purchase orders for some software, and actually you've got to retrofit it back all the way through to a business architecture.
Well, a lot of my time is spent trying to take customers back on those journeys and getting to baseline and understand what the problems that they're actually doing. Some clients are more resistive than others. We all go in where they've gone and bought Oracle ERP without understanding how it sits there, or
whatever. Oracle salesman.
Yeah.
So
but I think
are we
but I think
saying
all-
here? Are we saying here? Does enterprise architecture extend to the golf course? Is that what we're asking?
But I think what I was going to say was, I think in terms of if you operate like that, if you are adding on piecemeal solutions, it just becomes very, very expensive, and at some point it just gets out of control from a cost perspective, and the value that you're getting from IT, it goes out the window.
So if we've got the magic solution to all this, why aren't enterprise architects involved in that? If we honestly believe we've got the answer to how businesses don't waste their money doing extra things, and we've spent 30 years trying to show them that we ain't got the answer, the fact that they continue to do that says that they don't believe us or we're rubbish at it.
Well, there's probably a number of reasons for that, aren't there? First off, we're dealing with humans who have complex drivers, and often the first task you have to do when going in to speak to a business is to understand what the drivers are of the people running it. That's the first point. Secondly, there's preconceptions, and third, IT historically has not done itself any favors. If you look at where it first came about, and some of us are probably old enough to remember some of those early days, it was an ivory tower, and often IT's policy was they'll get what we give them, and that's kind of carried on. Some of it's still in the kind of joined memory of a lot of business people, but some of it still happens today. And that's why I come back to we're leaders. We should be persuading and helping to take on a journey.
We maybe should be. Sorry.
Apologies, Nigel. Go on.
So I think effectively enterprise architecture is being completely bypassed by agile and low code, because what it means is IT can be completely cut out of the kind of architecture can be completely cut out, and it won't be a case of you get what we give you. It'll be a case of the business folks who work with the delivery teams will use what they're given, and they'll have bought into it because they've been co-developing it. So even if it sucks, they'll use it because they helped build it.
They have a joint responsibility, so they can't complain.
If enterprise architecture is dead, I think one of the people with bloodied hands is sort of agile, and this is where
agile.
Fragile.
Agile delivery, because these days you get what the DevOps are going to deliver, and the DevOps will deliver whatever the product team says, and unless the EA has got the product team in a headlock, that's just going to go wild.
So do you think part of what EA actually is?
Can we have just one? Okay, Simon.
So part of enterprises architecture's issue. It's provenance. It's come from IT rather than come from the business. You could look at the TOGAF manual actually as how do you get an IT gig to come out in the hours of daylight?
So do we throw the frameworks out the window then?
No, I think that there's value in the frameworks, there's value in the process, and there's value in the education. I think the issue from an EA perspective is it comes from IT. IT has got issues, whether it was a mainframe, whether it's you're going to get it and like it or whatever, or the number of times it's actually rationalized things and made life a pain. SAP implementations and makes dystopian corporations or whatever. Actually, it has to be business first, and agile in a way is a business first in there. It's a product owner, products with a business case, and push something out to help. We have to approach that side and become more business focused. And IT's problem and enterprise architecture's problem is we know we add value, but we can't quantify that value. We know that banks can't operate without IT, but they don't know how much value add IT gives them.
Yeah, and I think it's also that seniority, it's that level of buy-in to enterprise architecture. So it's where that enterprise architect kind of reports into, I guess, to be early enough in that conversation, to be pragmatic, to be that entrepreneur, if you like, from an IT perspective, to go, actually, as a business, you should be doing this. Have you seen this product over here? This would really help you, this department do this.
This comes back to my point, though, about leadership. We are leaders. We should be leaders, because if we're not seen as leaders, we're not going to get that buy-in to the leaders of the business community. And we've got to be talking peer-to-peer with them for all intents and purposes.
Okay, so on that point then, Simon, about leaders, everybody that's on here, show of hands, whoever has a title of EA, do you feel that you're a leader, or do you just feel that you are fulfilling a role that you've been asked to do, but you're not at that table?
I think I'm a leader.
Depends on the client.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Depends on the size of the invoice.
What's the day rate? Yeah.
If you're a leader, then you're not serving. Shouldn't you be serving the business?
Yeah, you can be a leader and serving. I think that's a misnomer, to be honest. You can thought lead and serve at the same time. Because in the day you are. I mean, whether you call it creating art to the possible or anything else, the thought leadership part and the being able to forge or help forge direction is based on something else. And like business itself, business has leadership in it, but business has a purpose, generally filtered down from shareholders or the reason they were created or anything else. So it's still very much the same. And I've only just started talking, my apologies, I've been trying to find a place to chip in and I just wanted to touch on what Simon was saying previously, and I just want to word it slightly different, and that is, is enterprise architecture dead? Probably not, maybe it just needs to be reframed. Is IT dead? And IT is dying now. In terms of how you see IT traditional, how business sees IT traditionally, it's and coming back to the whole, there's no real value perceived in it now, and therefore business is choking IT. I've seen this in a few clients, whereby rather than using what they would consider their IT function, they see that as heritage, they see it as legacy, and they're progressing with this whole, sort of product teams building out things in an agile way using cloud. So if you see enterprise architecture as an extension of IT, whether you see enterprise architecture as a bridge or as a facilitator of making a building or anything else, but if you see enterprise architecture as sitting in IT, providing that bridge, or sitting in IT helping build that building, then you're going to, as a business, naturally see enterprise architecture as dying. What enterprise architecture needs to do, probably separate from IT or that legacy IT, is show how it's relevant for the new, how they want to do things, and actually that there is still value in what enterprise architecture can provide in this new world of flexible and adaptable technology, serving what the business wants when the business wants it.
Do you think it's because IT is now so ubiquitous? Sorry,
Simon. Apologies. The thing I was also going to say is one of the I've been stuck in a couple of roles and where it was difficult, and so one of the things I did to the business was actually, can you change? Is there a need? Everybody thinks of IT as this flexible thing, but actually it can't deliver its benefits without the business adapting it, using it, and changing. And very often I've had to do the case for change, and it's actually been about, can the business itself change to take advantage of the IT side of it to derive the maximum value?
If there's no change in the business, what's the benefit of IT? People would still be putting stuff in filing cabinets if there were no change to business.
And actually, sometimes, coming back to the business, is it the business's perception and processes which effectively stop it going to IT to facilitate change, rather than, let's just go to AN of because they've got a nice shiny thing, we can just go bolt in because it promises X, Y, and Z. And actually, that's where enterprise architecture can really come in and go, well, yeah, we can evaluate X, Y, and Z, and actually, yeah, it's a really, really good fit, or it just needs this, this, and this, or actually, you don't need your IT anymore, and maybe we build out a new IT function, but using the remnants of what was there, or it's just going to bolt into your IT anyway, so you still need to keep IT.
So is the role of an EA a trusted advisor and
generally useful person, yeah,
a useful person, somebody that they go to get some clear direction.
We
But it
provide that
sounds as though
governance and oversight as well, don't we? The three sides: enablement, governance and oversight, and facilitation. Really. So one is about where you are now and where you want to go. The other one is around making sure
in a few short sentences, I think. And I think the thing with the enterprise architecture pieces is that we talked a little bit about roadmaps, target architectures. Pitch them 2-3 years out. Well, that's not going to work today. There's a new set of tools some of you've spoke about there. So, I can go back to my engineering days. So, we always used to do rapid prototyping, which in the old IT world wasn't available to us. It'd take you 4 weeks to provision a box, get it built, blah, blah, blah. Now you can go do that in 10 minutes in the cloud. So the business now, shouldn't have to, sign up to Oracle or whatever. You can just say to Oracle, just show me, give me a cloud in your cloud, show me it. And there's all these different tools, which if you're an EA or somebody in that trusted advisor position, have got to adopt and have actually then got to integrate into how the business think and how they operate.
Haven't you highlighted a problem there?
Shorter.
Oracle often goes out and demonstrates their tools very, very adequately from their cloud demo, and someone sees that and they go, right, Oracle's the ideal tool for us. We're picking on Oracle, other large suppliers apply. They go in and demonstrate it, but then it's the edge cases. What's the event management like in the order management process? How can you integrate in and out of it? All those kind of things. What are the limitations around the business reporting capabilities or the data export capabilities? And they go out and buy it because they've seen this quick demo. Well, you're never going to learn everything on a huge system like an ERP solution or a big CRM solution. They buy it off the basis of that demo. Well, where and how do you get this governance, this oversight that says, hang on, guys, let's roll this back. Let's understand our order management process and let's go to Oracle with some coherent questions that say, this is our order management solution, our order management process. How are you going to make that work on your technology? Now, there is a move to low code and all these other kind of things, but they're great on little point solutions. How does that work in the enterprise level?
It's a bit blocky.
Look at Sainsbury's a few years ago. Sainsbury's went through that process, didn't they? They spent, I don't know how many years coming up with a new warehousing, ERP system, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Never worked. Never worked, nearly destroyed the business because it was so large and flexible. The program was so long, they couldn't test it. It was a nightmare. And those are the type of things that have got to be avoided. That's why, using rapid prototyping. That's why, again, going back to Amazon, using those small little scrum teams, dedicated teams to do things, actually, if you have to trash and burn it, your costs are so much lower to do that.
I think that's almost the way forward, to be honest. And it's this whole idea that we're trying to enforce something or do big things or anything else. No, it's effectively what should enterprise architecture be? In my eyes, it's you provide facilitation or utility, whatever you want to call it, to enable small change. Because if you can enable rapid small change and lots of small change, you de-risk change anyway. Effectively, your organization becomes a change organization. And I really believe that EA then has a purpose. But I don't believe it has a purpose in the traditional sense, as in, we're going to provide a load of governance to basically, try and keep monolith IT systems running, in a way that doesn't really serve the business. Business is tired of that now.
So when we talk about business
control, and now it's an orchestration piece. It's for EA to remain relevant when everyone's going out and doing a very quick user-centric, fast fail, doing a prototype and bringing a very limited piece together. Do we now need to be orchestrators rather than controllers of what's going on out there?
I think you've got a point there. Can we just bring some other colleagues in who are so I think Andy Shuttle had a point, and I'd like to jump to somebody else in a moment. So Andy, do you want to go ahead?
Sorry, yeah, no, I was just going to say, so in terms of that, we talked about kind of that agile approach and that kind of facilitating those small projects and what have you. Whilst I agree with that, I think one of the questions I was going to ask, and we talk a lot about business value on this call so far, is are people putting together business cases, and if so, how are they doing that, I guess, in that sort of approach?
Point.
Yeah, I've been involved in doing business cases for things that are being delivered in an agile way, certainly, and mapping out where they sit in the business and what functions they affect.
Okay. So is that a continual role in business case that you're continually kind of engaging at a business level with then as part of that?
And then releasing funds as you go along?
So it was done as a set of effectively 3 stages of business case where proving enough value in the first one would unlock the next bit. But it began, it was something which we did build in a kind of steel thread, business owners in the room and end users in the room, and build it out that way. But it had a full business case and a number of different prioritized value deliveries in it, and proving the value in the first one unlocked the others.
Okay.
So actually it made it easier to get the business case through because it was seed investment to prove that it was worthwhile and not stupid.
So you demonstrate value, then they release some additional money, and you move on to the next phase. I think like Pete was referring to earlier, which is small incremental changes that add value, that enable the business to reap those rewards before they then release some additional seed funding and allow you to carry on, rather than give us millions of pounds and we might deliver something in a couple of years. I do want to ask Mike Lewis at this point to come in. Now, from your experience, I know that you've worked in a number of organizations and you've worked with many customers. In terms of what you've seen in your experience when you've gone into these organizations, what are the sort of challenges that they face, and is it governance, is it control, is it the fact that they don't understand or they haven't developed an EA or a delivery methodology, or is it that they're asking you just to come in and just tell them what they have?
So it's a mixture. I did a very brief introduction, guys. I'm new to Solutionise Global, but I've got about a 12-15-year heritage in running consulting teams, going in and doing transformation planning and all that kind of stuff. So if you like, what I would call a pure play enterprise architecture role, but as an external into organizations, and certainly organizations that don't have an EA function today. I was going to take, just to as I've got the floor for a second, is to take the conversation back to, if you consider how many organizations you guys have worked in where the CIO has a place on the board, how many organizations do you know where the CIO doesn't report into the CFO and actually has a real place on the board, not seen, because technology functions today, the infrastructure in IT is actually seen as a cost center, never as a profit center. But if you actually look how organizations operate today, everybody is a technology company, because without the technology, they can't deliver whatever it is they're delivering. They can't do it today. But it's never really perceived that way at the executive level. And part of my work where I've been successful with organizations is actually convincing CEOs to re-engage again and actually work, rather than buying solutions based upon features. And I can't remember who said it earlier, but talking about somebody's demonstrated Oracle to us and then they've gone and made a huge purchase off the back of that. They're looking at features. They're very rarely looking at advantages. They're certainly not looking at benefits and how they actually match, require a proper requirements engineering function up front and delivering that. And I think when you're in smaller enterprises, you actually are talking to the people who actually own the budgets. In fact, it's their business, and they will give you a more fundamental set of requirements than somebody that thinks they've seen a product elsewhere working well and wants to try to shoehorn that into the business. So I think a lot of you guys here in the room, what I see is that you're often engaged way too late in the process, where you're having to pick through a load of dysfunctional or non-functional products that have been bolted together to try to enable something. But I think the perception of the business in the first place is the challenge, and they're not looking at you as an enablement function. They're looking at you as a cost center and another cost. So
you can also view it in a way that, sorry to cut across you there, Mike, but most of us are from an IT background. Shouldn't enterprise architecture be part of business change rather than IT change?
Yeah, well, I have I wrote if you connect to me, you'll probably see it on LinkedIn. But I wrote a paper last year around looking at change management in the whole IT sphere. Let's look at change management. Now, what usually happens is that somebody, be it the business or a technologist or both, fortunately, might get together and work out a way to improve an organization by adding in an application or adding in some functionality or changing the way something works in the organization. And then they flip it over the road to change management, and then change management go and tell the people that work in the organization how this new tool is going to help them do their job better. What you should be doing is engaging change management up front and counseling the organization to say what's wrong, what's broken, where are the inefficiencies, and then looking for solutions that will actually fix those inefficiencies and change those processes and enable the change to happen, and then implementing those solutions. Whereas the majority of organizations do it around the other way. They buy solutions and then try to integrate it into the workflow. It's look at the workflow, then integrate solutions later on, is my advocacy. And
so the role of architecture or enterprise architecture spans people, process, and technology.
Absolutely.
But it should be more oriented towards people and process, really, I think.
Sorry, Simon.
It needs to be more oriented towards people and process. Technology is what we bring in at the end to solve the problem. The people and the process are the absolute key, because they're normally, when I say they're part of the problem, or they are the problem, I mean it in the sense of, technology exists only to fulfill those business processes, as somebody said a few minutes ago.
It's layer 8, as I call it.
Sorry?
Layer 8.
Layer 8.
Okay.
After the 7 layers of networking.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of individuals on here who, and we're sort of coming up to 5 to 6, which the time has flown. I'd like to open up to anybody else that may want to contribute. And obviously at some point I need to hand over to Sam as well, because we could carry on for forever. And perhaps we can continue this conversation another time. Joe Sam will want to arrange one of these sessions again. And so Darren, Lodge, Sophie, Paolo, your thoughts, EA, enterprise architecture, your experiences. Darren, can we
Yeah, well, I mean, from my perspective,
you're working at the Department of Work and Pensions, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and we're very user-centered, with squads working with the users directly, putting them at the heart of the solutions. Obviously, we have an EA function that's obviously bringing, doing great sort of strides in terms of digital transformation and kind of bringing those two worlds together. So we're working in cloud and stuff like that. So it's all very much about putting the user at the heart and then building the solutions around them. So
okay, and do you have a definition of enterprise architecture within the department?
Yeah, we have enterprise architects. They're very much around the core business capabilities and how the big things that kind of pull all the different things together. We have an application reference architecture that we're kind of implementing as part of the solutions that we're building, so that we can, drive out true sort of reuse across the organization. And that's coupled against sort of, coming from a very sort of user-centric sort of approach as well. So being able to adapt fast and respond to user needs. So it's quite an interesting kind of world that we live in at the moment.
Okay, interesting. So I think somebody mentioned earlier around it's about the engagement with the customer, the colleague, the business, and developing what they need rather than monolithic systems. Paolo, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Does this sort of resonate with your experience?
Well, my experience is that most of the time there is really a detachment between the architects and the developers and the people who implement the stuffs, and these create a loss of value. Most of the time, people thinks, this is the referral architecture. Yes, but it has been done in another way. It has been implemented in another way. It has been, well, we had to change it because of this, because of that. So the result is that, yeah, there is this feeling of not adding value. While I think instead that there should be a lot of value in a designing of an architecture, because the architecture should be able to see the big picture and drive through a coherent situation. That's where there should be the value.
And have you seen that with the view that there's no value, that it dilutes the role and loses its credibility?
Yeah, of course. If the people in the company don't see the value that is added by somebody, then the people think, okay, the role is useless. This is not what is real, because, as I said, there is a lot of value that can be put there, but there's a struggle in communicating this. There's a struggle in maintaining a connection. And it's not that low coding or agile remove the need of a long-term strategy, a long-term understanding. So there is the risk that we are going to throw away the solution architect, the software architect role, throwing away all the advantage that comes from that. So we have to fight for having the architect still not in charge, but bringing value, and being the life motive in the long run of a company.
Okay, I think we're coming up to 6 o'clock, and I'm going to just hand over back to Sam very quickly, but we can maybe take some 1 or 2 final questions at the end of this. Sam.
So I think have we actually come to a sort of a common understanding across the group to ultimately define, is enterprise architecture dead? So a few people that ultimately spoken to it but haven't been able to sort of make the event tonight, their ultimate consensus is, which I think we've touched on as well, is it is pretty much dead. I think if they've got strong enough engineering teams within organisations, but we are veering away from having enterprise architecture in there. Yorkshire Building Society being one of them, William Hill being another, Skybet again moving away from having a sort of true, what I would call a true generalist enterprise architect in there. And I think based on what everybody said, I think there's pros and cons for having them.
Agree. I think the key message from tonight, though, is keep adapting the role so that we all stay employed.
Yeah, please.
Adapting to what, isn't it?
Yes.
So have we got any sort of other questions from the wider group?
I've got a sort of dissenting opinion on your summary there, Sam. I think for me, enterprise architecture is not dead, and I'm not sure I recognise some of the descriptions that I've heard here tonight. I think when we're talking about us as a group of people who have had an IT background and how enterprise architecture has grown from solution architecture and software architecture, the only thing that's the same between those and enterprise architecture is the name architecture. For me, yes, I've done some dev in the past in my background. I've also done quite a lot of business architecture. I think the concept of enterprise architecture is very much alive. I think enterprise architecture is a fundamental thing that every business needs, but it's not always fulfilled by the person who holds the role of enterprise architect. It's often fulfilled by the the CEO table, the board table filling that role. They're the ones that discuss how the enterprise should be architected. They're the ones that make the decisions around what the business is going to do. So that's kind of one of my points around enterprise architects should be advisors to that group. So that's kind of what I aim for when I go into an organization, is being the advisor at that C-level, if I possibly can. It takes a lot of time to get to that trust point, absolutely. It takes a lot of communication, absolutely. All the things that we've been talking about, communicating and governing and having something sensible to say and having facts at our fingertips and being able to bring it back into that group, that's essential. But the hidden concept of enterprise architecture, that is always going to exist and always going to be needed. And it's not dead, it's alive. It's just the role of enterprise architect has been driven down a route, and it's tripped itself up on some of the development methodologies. So the conversation about the dev methods, whether it's waterfall or agile, completely irrelevant to enterprise architecture. Doesn't make any difference at all how you deliver. What matters is that you're delivering the right thing. I've got lots of other points as well, but I couldn't get them in during the conversation.
So can I? Sorry, can I just say
hi
there, guys? My name's Jonathan Sanderson. I'm the managing director of Corecom Consulting. So apologies, I wasn't on at the start. My son had an unfortunate incident last week, which meant I had to go get his hand redressed after nursery today. But all good, don't worry, it's all fine. These things make you stronger, don't they? So, but I just wanted to thank Lambros and Sam for arranging such a fantastic event. So it's one of Sam's very first ones with Corecom, and hopefully we're going to have many more of these. So, so I'm actually to do something that might make you all feel a bit uncomfortable. So I'm not sure whether you've all been doing this, but we're very much a company that likes to celebrate success. So normally we'd give everyone a big round of applause, but obviously that doesn't really work on here. So everyone hands up, and then you just give a little wiggle, a little bit of a jazz hands. So this is the modern world we live in. So even in lecture theatres now, this is what people are
elbow bumps as well.
So that's going to be a screenshot, isn't it, for a post now? You just get, hey, look at the architect's way.
I've lost the puppet.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Like I say, so apologies I wasn't on from the very beginning. So I mean, I'm not an expert in architecture by any stretch of imagination. Also, apologise for the stuff in the background as well. I'm in the process of moving house, and my wife seems to think that all the packing boxes belong in my office. That'd be a good place for them to go. So there's all kinds of random things keep on appearing. So someone. You're talking about me, Richard. Like I'm normally sober. So.
No, it's me. To be honest, usually, at the beginning, normally when it's I speak to Sam or speak to Lambros or many of the people on here, I'm usually drunk. So it's sober for once.
You haven't filled out a change request to be drunk.
Yeah, that's it.
We can make beer compulsory for the next one. So
yeah, if you don't mind, and actually supply it, that'd be great as well. In a location with a pub.
Yeah, well, hopefully as soon as we can, Richard, we will be going back to the pub and.
It's the only time I drive up to Leeds, mate. So yeah, please.
Fair enough.
We'll also send out a feedback form as well. So if you could fill that in for us tomorrow, and any feedback you could give would be great. Anything we could do to improve the session today, and also any other topics that you think would be interesting. I think this one's been fantastic. Divided the room in two, but I definitely agree that we are facing a much more user-centric way of working. So that's all that's on the matter. I won't say whether I agree or disagree. But yeah, and definitely it's not about what you give them within IT. So businesses aren't happy to do that anymore. Like they want the products that they want. So but thank you very much, guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one.
Will you be putting a link to this onto LinkedIn so we can comment on that as well, which would be good?
Absolutely,
yes,
it's recorded, Simon. So I'll share the recording with you all as well.
That'd be cool. It's going to descend into millions and millions of posts, isn't it?
I just have to say, from a non-EA background, I found the discussion very interesting. I don't feel quite as dense as I did before about solution architects and data architects and enterprise architects. And I'd just like to say, you know, from doing this work on building a data platform in Leeds, it's easy to see the disconnect between the IT and the business, and the people and process that tend to get in the middle and get left behind. I just think it's been really interesting that we didn't know we needed an enterprise architect until we got one. So I think it's around PR, it's around promoting that role, and it's about letting people know actually the kind of benefits that you can bring to it. Because I think as a trust, we've stumbled along without one for a long time.
It's the bridge, isn't it? If you haven't got the bridge, you can't walk across the river.
No.
Yeah.
So that's my observations for today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
So the £10 will be in the post tomorrow, I think.
plus VAT, make it 12.
The NHS, come on, you've got to give them a discount.
And John Smith just remembered me.
Well, whatever you do, Julia, don't talk to John Smith about data.
I've known John